All right, let's have a look at this and the rest of the day's top stories with the Australian's political writer, Geoff Chambers. Geoff, great to see you as always on a Monday. Look, last week was nothing short of a disaster for the Labor government. Dutton effectively ran the legislative agenda from the opposition leader's office. You've written that Labor's in trouble. What do you think about the analysis that I've just spoken about here from many of your colleagues, that there's a chance that this could be a one-term government?
Hi, Sharri. Well, that was the intro to my piece on the front page of the Australian newspaper on Saturday. And last week, it's been, internally deemed as the worst week for the government since the election, worse than the referendum loss. And for the first time, particularly on the weekend after my piece ran, I had a lot of phone conversations and contact with Labor people. And we'd really, to that point, we'd seen a lot of unity, solidarity as the government rolled out their agenda. Now we're starting to hear some question marks over political management, policy development, and very low level rumblings over the need now for a major reset or potentially a reshuffle to really get things back on track, because so many of the economic factors and the security factors which are going to weigh down this government towards Christmas, there is no saying that it might not actually worsen into the start of next year. And if we see a series of polls showing a downwards trajectory, there will be some serious conversations being had internally about the Prime Minister's handling of government, and the fact that he seems to have a lot of ministers in portfolios, whether it's security or economic, that are doing their thing without a Prime Minister showing that direct leadership.
Now, let's move on to Optus. Kelly Bayer Rosemarin has stepped down today as the CEO. This is just days after she bravely fronted up to the Senate for a grilling on Friday. Now, she took all of the heat for Optus's parent company, Singtel, even though it was an offshore system run by Singtel that was the trigger event that caused the outage. Kelly's clearly, in my view, been used as the scapegoat to deflect attention and embarrassment from Optus. And there are so few female business leaders in Australia, so few female chief executives, and yet politicians, including Albanese today, went so hard on her for their own political purposes, and now she's been forced out. It kind of reminds me of the whole Christine Holgate scandal and how she was treated. And Kelly was also hung out to dry with no COO. She didn't have her own communication experts to advise her on how to handle the media on the day of the actual outage. This all left her vulnerable. Now, she's a young, very bright, up-and-coming executive. It looks like she was set up to fail, not given the support by Singtel. Geoff, it really looks to me like she's been treated unfairly. She's been sacrificed by the global company as a fall girl in this instance, for this outage that was caused by their own offshore systems.
Yeah, it was an absolute debacle, Sharri. But I guess we go back to September last year, and there was that major cyber incident, and there were question marks there around her handling and her team's handling and management of that crisis then we had obviously the outage a few weeks ago. I think that Optus should have learnt the lessons of last year and, as you said, brought in more support and help around her to be able to handle that. I mean, what happened the other week and the impact on millions of Australians in terms of KPIs, I mean, at the end of the day, the CEO wears it, but there was a huge political witch hunt. It started immediately from the government and all sides have joined that. You'll see statements from every political party today welcoming her departure. But it is the second biggest telco in this country. We need it to be operating effectively and well. We need that competition here in Australia. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. Obviously, Gladys Berejiklian is there. We'll see what kind of role she plays moving forward.
Look, just to go back to Albanese for a moment, a big story today, of course, what I spoke about in my editorial, Albanese's handling over the injured Australian Navy personnel, whether or not he actually raised it with Xi Jinping. It doesn't look like he did from that answer he gave Kieran Gilbert. But then there's also the issue of the secrecy and why the government kept this incident secret until after Albanese's visit with Xi. What's your view about how they've handled all of this?
Really poorly. I think efforts this afternoon were really cynical, very mealy-mouthed. I think it's absolutely 100% clear that the Prime Minister did not raise this with Xi. The timing was appalling. It came days after this serious incident. We saw all the photo ops. We constantly hear that rhetoric about how Australia and China will find this middle ground to get along. But only last week, the ASD revealed that the Chinese were sponsoring mass cyber attacks on Australia. We've got intellectual property theft. I mean, the list is really long. And I think the Prime Minister has to categorically say what happened here. He said that the usual channels were followed. Well, that would usually mean that Wang Yi probably was aware of what had happened on the sidelines of APEC. But as for a leader-to-leader discussion about it, very, very unlikely.
All right, Geoff Chambers, great to see you again on a Monday. Thank you so much for your insights, and we look forward to reading your articles in the Oz this week.